Welcome to the Tao of Our Understanding Recovery Podcast. In this podcast, we discuss mystical works of literature and how they relate to recovery. We hope you enjoy today's podcast episode.
Hello, this is Buddy C. Welcome to the Tao of Our Understanding Recovery Podcast. Today we have Oscar and Lori. Good to have you guys. Before we get to the 51st verse of the Tao Te Ching, any announcements, go to buddyc.org. Got a lot of things there for you. Today we're discussing the 51st verse of the Tao Te Ching. If you're new to the podcast, we discuss how the Tao Te Ching witnesses our recovery, really would be a way to say it. For each of us, I believe I can speak for folks who are on the podcast regularly in saying that when I read the Tao Te Ching, I'm like, wow, this is what my perception of the higher power is most like. And it fit right in with my Christian beliefs. It didn't conflict as any of those things went. Very universal in thought. A lot of people who have difficulty with a higher power find their higher power through studying about the Tao. And the Tao Te Ching is loosely translated is the book of the path of virtue. TE is virtue. So this is the book of how to walk in love, basically, is how I see it. How to live a compassionate life. And the reason compassion is so important is not because it's the right thing to do and then you get rewarded. I believe it's more of because compassion brings me to the moment, because I really feel another 3-letter word for God is now. Everything about what I've learned, even in my Christianity, of what Jesus taught, was bringing me to the moment. He said there were only 2 commandments. Love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. I could see that as allowing love to control and saturate all of my life. And then secondly, love your neighbor as yourself. I can do neither of those things if I'm not in the moment. I can only do that right now. So Course in Miracles puts that as being the eternal present, I believe is how they say it, which is great. A great way to say that. It's the eternal present. The moment is always the eternal present moment. And when I'm kind, I can only do that right now. So all of this is pointing me to the moment. So let's get started. The 51st verse. Lori, I believe you're going to read Jonathan's star for us.
Indeed. Verse 51. Tao gives all things life. Te gives them fulfillment. Nature is what shapes them. Living is what brings them to completion. Every creature honors Tao and worships Te, not by force, but through its own living and breathing. Though Tao gives life to all things, Te is what cultivates them. Te is that magic power that raises and rears them, completes and prepares them, comforts and protects them. To create without owning, to give without expecting, to fill without claiming. This is the profound action of Tao and the highest expression of Te. Different. Nice. They don't talk about Te very often, right? So far. You're muted, buddy.
You're exactly right, Lori. We do not talk about day that often. And, that is, the day is in the Tao Te Ching. So there's several words for day. I'm going to look up those for us right quick. One is obtain, gain, possess, benefit, receive, get, attain. And the second, which is the one in verse 51, is virtue. Choosing truth above ego is one description I see for that. It's funny. I put initials when I have one of those quotes, so I can't take credit for it. And it's DD, and I don't know who DD is. I've forgotten. I'm gonna have to do a better job of that. Choosing truth above ego. Yes, I can see that. I'll read to Stephen Mitchell. Every being in the universe is an expression of the Tao. It springs into existence, unconscious, perfect, free, takes on a physical body, lets circumstances complete it. That is why every being spontaneously honors the Tao. The Tao gives birth to all beings, nourishes them, maintains them, cares for them, comforts them, protects them, takes them back to itself, creating without possessing, acting without expecting, guiding without interfering. That is why love of the Tao is in the very nature of things. So Stephen Mitchell translates day as love there. I'm looking at my interpretation. It's definitely not a translation of verse 51. Life-giving love. Sobriety gives life to all who seek. Love shapes and gives form. Circumstances complete. All honor this way of love spontaneously, whether they wish to or not. It is the nature of all. This way gives all but does not possess, acts without expecting gratitude, cultivates without interfering. How do we touch this deep and profound love? We surrender to what is. That's it though, isn't it? We just surrender to what is. That's our part. We were studying the 6th step meeting this week. We were talking about being entirely ready, which is our part in the 6th step. We're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. For me, I could say with that step, instead of God, I could say I was ready for love to remove these defects of character, or compassionate living. I'm trying to use the word love less and use some more descriptives, because I think sometimes we get hung up on a word like God or love, and we think it's so far out there. But compassionate living is just, it's living. It's our true nature. Once we've surrendered our fears, which we start working through, and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 help us with that, and the rest of the steps too. We're entirely ready. I think that would apply to this verse. What is it that molds us? What is it? How does this molding happen? Every being in the universe is an expression of the Tao. Some people translate Tao as the path or God. Every universe is, and every being is an expression. You know, if you would have asked me 10 years ago, what is an expression of God? I would think only good things. I wouldn't think, things I thought were good things. Not everything. How are bad, or things that are just like, how would something that's harmful to someone be an expression of the Tao? How is that being an expression of the Tao? Could it be that things that are harmful, or I know that in recovery that I am grateful for my alcoholism, because without my alcoholism, I would not have learned how to surrender. I would not have learned how to let go. And once I learned to let go with alcohol, I could see a way to live a surrendered life with things that weren't killing me, things that I had managed in the past and done an okay job with, and could probably stumble through and do okay with the rest of my life managing. People do it every day. But the freedom that comes from living a surrendered life, I could not see that until I struggled for 6 years and almost died from my alcoholism, that I could finally say, okay, I give up. I cannot do this. And once I said that, I moved from thinking God, that some force, somehow, some whatever, helped me do it to me stepping out of the way and allowing it to be done. Big difference between you stepping out of the way and allowing versus you being helped, in quotations. I'm not helped with my sobriety. I learned to step out of the way and allow sobriety to rise in my life. Just like with everything else, I can take any interaction and I can come at it and I think it's the difference between approaching any situation from a place of fear rather than a place of helpfulness. For me, that's the distinction. With fear, I'm protecting something. I'm trying to, and that shows up in me as dishonesty, selfishness, or resentment, which resentment shows up in anger for me.
Can I read the Ron Hogan one?
Please.
He uses the word power. I'm glad that Star used day or tay because, yeah, that's in the title, right? Tao Te Ching. and you never hear about it. In the other translations, you don't notice that relationship because the way it's translated. So this is Ron Hogan. He's just funny. Tao is the source of all living things, and they are nourished by Tao's power. Their influence, power. There's the power. They're influenced by the other living things around them, and they are shaped by their circumstances. Everything respects Tao and honors its power. That's just the way it is. Tao gives life to all things, and its power watches out for them, cares for them, helps them grow, protects them, and comforts them. Create something without holding on to it. Do the work without expecting credit for it. Lead people without giving them orders. That's the secret power of Tao. Cool.
Lead without giving orders.
Take that, yeah. Especially as an alcoholic, I don't like being told what to do, so that works for me.
So how do we, if I start with talking about my alcoholism, then I can see how to apply it in other parts of my life. So me in AA, let's say I'm working with sponsees. How do I don't really lead them, but I do, there's some leading that happens.
They call it suggestions, right?
Yes. It happens, but it's not in the way that we lead, but we don't lead. It's leading without leading.
You present options and let the people decide. And you lead, they say, by example, right?
Exactly. I know for me, I just, if we're talking about walking up a path, if it's rocky, I would say, now, this path I found very rocky, and I had to pick my feet up a little more, or I would trip. That's how I walk that path. I wouldn't say, this is what you should do, or if you do it this way, you'll be fine. I just tell them how I did it. If they want to do it my way, it's fine. If they want to do it a different way, they can do it. I take no responsibility for their sobriety, unlike if it were a job and I was training someone, or there was some, if I was responsible for the outcome, I don't have to take responsibility for that. And when I do, what I find is that I always get in the way. If I'm taking the responsibility, I'm expecting an outcome. So, I want everyone that I would work with to get sober and stay sober. Obviously I would want that, but I cannot force them to do anything, nor is it a good practice for me to give advice. That never works for me, to give advice. It never works. I've learned in recovery, when I'm working with someone, I'll make suggestions based on what I have done. If they need something different than that, I'll refer them to someone else.
Buddy, I was getting clear on, I'm going to write a book, or I am in the process of writing a book, and in getting clear about what my goals were for the book. This was exactly something that showed up for me this last week. I wrote, I will share only my experience, perspectives, influencers and tools. There will be no educating, informing, or even inspiring. Those things will happen on their own. This removes from me all temptations to judge, manipulate, have expectations, contort things, or assume anything about the people, the readers. So this leaves me in a beautiful space to stand while I'm writing, open and flowing, as opposed to trying to compare and judging. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And then, you can take that a step further when you're the listener or the reader, not the writer. If you're the reader, I have found that if I'm reading the book and I'm not seeking knowledge, but seeking their experience that they're writing in the book. That's what I love about Hawkins' book, Letting Go, The Pathway of Surrender. That is his experience of how to let go. Anyone that has difficulty letting go, this book I've got it in the bookstore at buddyc.org. It's Letting Go, The Pathway of Surrender, David R. Hawkins, or you can get it at Amazon. It's got a white and yellow cover. That really is how to do the first 3 steps, in my opinion. It's really how to step out of the way. I've read it with multiple sponsees. We've done book studies on the book. It's just really, really, I could not suggest it more. Check it out. I think it would be helpful to you. And it's a great Audible too, by the way. I love the Audible because it's very easy to listen to. I first listened to it and then I got the book and started studying it. I do much better with the Audible first and see if it's something I want to dig in. But this idea of looking for folks' experience, I looked at that word day in this verse, and it's the virtue or power is the translation of day, not the to gain. The first one that I read is the second one, according to this, which would make sense. So before we move on about is everything an expression of the Tao? Oscar, go ahead, sir. I didn't see your hand.
Yeah, thank you. I could add to this, there is a Dutch translation of the Tao Te Ching.
Oh, good.
And he's really an authority in translating Chinese Taoistic literature. And he translates it as the Book of Tao and the Inner Power. So it's inner power. He translated day with inner power. And I really recognize this also in this star verse and also in the verses you read. And it's a kind of hard to distinguish Tao from day, because in the end, they are one. They are one. Only the day manifests, if I read this right, manifests more in time and space. And Tao just is what you started with, the eternal present. The eternal present. Eternal present is so huge. And within that eternal present that moves the energy and the life comes from the eternal present. And within this life, we have this inner power, which also a part of life or kind of life power and I really like the idea of this verse is going back to just this inner power, Te and Tao. And to get there it's not getting there, it's already here. I just have to let go of all the bullshit in my head. So all this thoughts of present and future, all the thoughts of identity, all the fears in my heart, all the insecurity. Also for me, the book you mentioned of David Hawkins really helped in first seeing what is there. So looking in my heart for real and see, okay, there's fear. And then get into the fear And by entering the fear and accepting it's there, I also find the peace into the fear. And when I stay there, I can let it go. As I don't let it go, it just goes. It just vanishes. It's not there. It's not real. It has nothing to do with truth. And the peace has to do with truth. There's a reality in it, and the reality. When we see reality or live in reality, we always come back to eternal present. It's the only thing. But we call it eternal. It's strange, right? Because it suggests a flow of time which is not there. The flow of time goes through this eternal present, and then and we can't be anything else but be a part of this, because we are in it, because we are in time. We must be a part of eternal present. And when I get there, thanks to 12 Steps or David Hawkins or Course in Miracles or whatever, meditation, then I feel, okay, this is okay. This is okay. It's okay to live. And then I come to create without owning, to give without expecting, to feel without claiming, and the only problem is separation, right? And the separation takes place when my head says, "No, but you got to own this, or you got to do this, or you got to take care of yourself, or you got to take care of this, or this is dangerous. Oh, if this doesn't happen." All the thoughts in my head are trying to separate me from Tao and De. Thank you. Beautiful verse.
Yes, it is. You reminded me of, is it quantum entanglement? Is that the right phrase?
I don't know. What's that?
Let's talk about it for a minute. It's the phenomenon of a group of particles being generated, interacting, or sharing spatial proximity in such a way that the quantum state of each particle of the group cannot be described independently of the state of others, including when particles are separated by large distances. So in other words, they take these particles, ever how they do it, and they split them and they separate them. And one turns one way, the other one turns the same way at the same time. And they don't know why, as if they're one.
Yeah, it's a thing Einstein couldn't explain, right?
Yeah.
The riddle of Einstein. Yeah.
It's called quantum entanglement. So it's amazing how we get a sense of things being one, or I do, more and more. The more that I meditate, the more that I surrender my will, my life, and the cares, and try to step out of the way in life, I see this more and more. Now science is saying the same thing.
Yeah, it's insane. I had a conversation talking about science. I had a conversation this week with somebody who lives in the south of the Netherlands, and they're going to build a telescope where they hope to see the Big Bang. It's insane. Science is looking for something which you can find not in science.
How are they going to see the Big Bang?
They can already see now stars from I think that 100 million years after the Big Bang they can see now, because time is traveling and it takes ages. So if we go far enough, we can see it, right? If the light is far enough,
that would make sense. That would make sense.
Light is far enough, we can.
So you're looking back in time because the light's traveling our direction. We go back past that, so we can see. Okay.
Yeah. Insane.
Yeah. But science is not counter to spirituality. We sometimes can think that, especially if you get into some aggressive argument. I remember they used to have those God, no God argument things. And I just have no use for any of that because, I know how I sense this and it's changing. So there's really nothing to argue about. It's
No,
just,
science is beautiful. I think it's really beautiful, but you always know less than you know. So there's always a bigger part that you don't know.
well, we're all speaking different languages, Oscar. It's different. This scientist may be speaking this language, this other guy's speaking, but in reality, they're saying the same thing. It just doesn't sound the same.
I was just reading with a friend this week the Yoga Sutras.
Yes.
And Patanjali, this is one of the translations, but in verse 17, he talks about Patanjali is completely scientific in this respect. He sees yoga as a vigorous science and never hesitates to give all the aspects of the practice and their ramifications. It's the duty of scientists to understand and explain every aspect of their discovery. It's just as when chemists formulate medicine, they have to explain its proper usage, as well as adverse reactions that occur if it's not used properly. So he goes on about, as you discover things in meditation, you have a responsibility to, he talks about the atom bomb and stuff, how we discover these things and then we're not responsible, and how we apply them or thinking the consequences through clearly and from a balanced perspective. So you guys, it's so funny how the topics I'm thinking about and reading about all week keep showing up in these meetings on Saturday. I love it.
That's the way it's supposed to be because it's all one thought, Lori. We don't realize that.
But even the specifics, right? Yes. Yeah, the God winks. Love it. Thanks for bringing that up, Oscar. I love that.
I was at a meeting. Oh, this was years and years ago when my son was, he was 7 or 8. He used to go to meetings with me some when I'd go. We were in a church meeting, actually in a church, a small church. We met they were doing some work. We were actually meeting in the sanctuary of this little church. And there was a guy that came some, and he was just cussing like horribly. And he was just, it was just, I almost said something to him because it's just so disrespectful. You're sitting in a church even. And my son's sitting there and he's 8 years old. And he's heard all that before. So I didn't really, but I didn't say stuff like that around him. But, he had heard, that kind of talk. So we left and I said, well, Max, Bob was a good example for you tonight. I said, he was an example of how not to behave. And he said, yes, I can see that. I said, okay, just remember that. And maybe that's some of the experience we can glean from folks that are full of fear and reacting out of fear and harming others because they're full of fear. It all goes back for me to fear. If it goes back in me to fear, I'm sure it would go for everyone if it was looked at enough, or sickness of some type. So maybe that's where the expression of beings that don't look like expressions of the Tao or the path. Okay, the next little stanza, it springs into existence, unconscious, perfect, free, takes on a physical body, let circumstances complete it. What is it? It's the creature, because Jonathan Starr says every creature honors Tao and worships Day, not by force, but through its own living and breathing. And Mitchell says that's why every being spontaneously honors the Tao. And I believe that's correct. My experience with that is that when I surrender my fears, I don't want to hurt people automatically. I don't want to go kill somebody. I want to be nice. I want to help people. I want to be kind. That tells me that that's my nature. And it's just been covered by all this fear that I thought was that I needed to protect. That was part of me when the fear was just blocking and hiding me from me. Yeah. It says day is what cultivates us. Day is that magic power that raises and rears them, completes and prepares them, comforts and protects them. I can see compassion as being that. We were talking about the 6th step. I am changed when I allow love to have its way in my life. When I'm in a situation and I choose to be helpful instead of fearful, guess what? I change. I change. And I only have that opportunity in the moment, right? I was going into Walmart the other day. Actually, I think I was using the restroom and there was paper towels on the floor. There's always something screwed up around there. And so I picked up the paper towels and put them in the trash can. I don't recall getting upset while I was in Walmart about anything. That's getting less and less because I'm always see a way to be helpful, which paves the way for me not to entertain my disapproval or, my pride. A lot of that's ego and pride, of course. There's some of that I'm better than these people kind of thing popping out. I don't like that, but it's there. And the more that I serve, the less of that shows and the less of that's there. I don't have to work on getting rid of my ego. What I have to do is allow compassion to do that by taking, we call it contrary action. We act our way into right thinking rather than think our way into right acting. So as a result of allowing compassion, virtue to complete us, it's a magic power. It really is. I like that. I like that. It's a magic power. It does things that nothing else can do for us. I think that's why we know God is love, is because love is the force that changes us, that completes us, that protects us. How about this one? If you want to get ahead, this is from verse 67. If you want to get ahead, show people compassion. When other people attack you, defend yourself with compassion. It's the most powerful force in the universe. That's Hogan, the last stanza of verse 67. That's good. As a result, like Oscar mentioned, we can create without owning or possessing. We can give without expecting. Ooh. I always know my motive for giving based on what I expect. If I expect a response, if I expect to get acknowledged, if I make sure people know that I did something, I know I'm still got a ways to go in my motivation for what's going on. If I create something, I want everyone to know about it. I have a new business that I'm doing that I was given an original idea, and it's really I'm grateful. I can find myself when I'm talking about it to really, hey, it's me. So instead of owner or any of that, I'm just the creative director. I've changed my name, how I'm acknowledged, because I've told the guy that works with me, I said, I want to be the creative director. I don't want to be the person who came up with this. So I'm trying to keep that at bay, but that's tough. That's tough. But all this is a result of allowing compassionate living to possess and take over our lives, really, and to feel without claiming. Or Mitchell says, guiding without interfering. I've had this, this happens multiple times. I'm sure it has with everyone. Someone asks you to do something like at work or something, and you just take care of that. You go to take care of it, and then they keep telling you how to do it because you're not doing it exactly like they want it done. No one. And I'm saying, well, if you want to tell me how to do it, you need to just do it. Let me do this. It gets to a point to where it's interfering and not helpful. For me, that always comes from a place of fear. Always. That is why the love of the Tao is in the very nature of things. This is the profound action of Tao, the highest expression of virtue or inner power. That is our inner power. And it's a different kind of power. It's really more of a I access through helplessness. I'm powerless, but I'm not helpless. I have to surrender my abilities to allow this to take over in my life. And even though I may have abilities with something, I can approach whatever that task is, even with abilities, from a place of powerlessness. I'm talking powerlessness of ego and self and those things. And this gives me ways that red flags. Oh, I'm expecting something out of this. I want to take credit for this. I'm interfering in this. All of that tells me I'm not letting compassion have its way in my life. So what do I do about it? Well, I can only do this in the moment. So I don't have to worry about doing this entirely or next week or what I did yesterday. Now it's okay. Right now, how can I live a surrendered life and allow virtue, allow compassion to run my life, which is really what I'm wanting. Like Oscar talked about, I'm looking for peace and joy. And I only find that if I'm in acceptance and I'm not trying to control and run everything. And the reason this resonates with others is because it's really their nature too, even if they don't realize it yet. That's why there's I'm in quotations, a Christmas spirit. For a lot of folks, Christmas is the only time that they give without expecting in return. If they don't expect in return, it's on. So they call this they feel good when because why do you think they feel good? Because they're giving. And it's the only time of the year they experience this. So it's their nature too. It's their nature too. It's funny. I hear them talk about the Christmas spirit. I said, yeah, you can experience it year round. You don't have to just wait for a day a year. You can experience that all the time. And that's one of the gifts of recovery. I never would have seen that outside of recovery. Oscar?
Yeah, it sounds like we can break it down to the choice for love or a choice for fear, right?
Yes.
At all times in this moment. And as soon as I am confronted with fear of other people, my fear also starts to come up and it tends to take over. And for me, recovery is really growing into recognizing this and to be able to choose again.
Yes. Because that eternal present just keeps going. Just keeps going. I had a friend of mine describe that as a film strip. You snap a picture of this moment, everything that there is in this moment. And then that's one of the slides on the film strip. It's one of the images on the film strip. So when you run that film strip, it's just a bunch of single images put together. And that's the way our life is. It's all of these moments, one moment after another. I can't be watching if I'm watching a film, I can't say, oh, okay, while the film's running, I can't go back and look at another. I need to just stay right there where I'm at. It's the same way for us. Same way for us. Anytime I try to have expectations or try to mold the future, I can't recall hardly a time it ever worked the way that I thought it would or wanted it to. It's always different. And especially different when I didn't want it, like it was fearful things. Those things never, ever happen like all the big, bad boogie bear things that you're just going to happen. Never happened that way. Now, granted, sometimes bad things happen, but it was never, my extreme was, I was, dying and family dying, and I was broke, and the whole, the whole thing, never was that way. Most of the time it wasn't bad at all. I had just envisioned it that way because my fear was creating all of those thoughts and feelings, and all that was coming out of trying to support my fear. One more thing. I have to be careful about the steps, because what I'll do is I'll look at them as a progressive. Okay, I'm done with 1. I'm done with 2. I'm done with 3. I'm done with 4. Granted, we go through them in that order, and they are in order for a reason. Okay, so I go through them. But once I'm through them, I'm not through with them. It's almost like they become, in the West, we look at things always, we go from one to the next to the next. Like you go through one door, you get the next door to the next door to the next. Maybe with the steps, after I've worked them, it's like a big room and all the doors opening to the one room. Instead, that's more of an Eastern way of looking at things. And I have to remember that, because those steps apply, and sometimes it's 6 and sometimes it's 11, and it doesn't matter. All those things help reveal our true nature, right? Man, such a gift. Yeah, that's good. Good conversation today, guys. Anything else before we close? You guys have a great week, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.
Hello, this is Buddy C. I wanted to make you aware of several recovery-related resources that I've posted in the episode description. These resources include a list of recovery podcasts, a free sober meditation app, daily recovery email, shared Google recovery calendars. Hope you put some of these resources to use, and have a great week.
Thank you for listening to the Tao of Our Understanding Recovery Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends in recovery.